A young billionaire gave food to two twin sisters on a city street in the middle of winter. And the next day, 3 police cars showed up in front of his mansion. The digital clock on the Audi RS7 blinked 11:47 p.m. when Michael Bennett adjusted the car's heater once again. The temperature had dropped drastically over the past few days, turning the city into an almost surreal landscape, with snowflakes lazily dancing under the golden glow of the streetlights. The financial district, usually swarming with expensive suits and high heels during the day, now rested in an almost sepulchral silence, broken only by the occasional roar of a lone cab or the hurried footsteps of some late-night worker trying to get home. Michael massaged his temples, feeling the familiar throbbing pain that always came with particularly stressful days. His last meeting of the day had gone far beyond the planned schedule, delicate negotiations with Chinese investors who insisted on questioning every single comma in the contracts. At 32, as the president of one of the largest private banks in the country, he should have been used to the pressure, but some nights were heavier than others. The face of his father, framed in a photo on his desk, seemed to judge his every decision with that characteristic half-smile. "Power and responsibility are two sides of the same coin, son," he used to say, usually followed by a sip of his favorite whiskey. Michael took over the presidency of the bank before he even turned 30, after a massive heart attack took his father's life. Since then, every day had been a new test of whether he was living up to the Bennett legacy. The snow began to fall more intensely, creating small white whirlwinds that danced in the air. Michael slowed down, more out of habit than necessity. The streets were practically deserted. That was when something unusual caught his attention through the windshield. In the city's central square, known for its century-old trees and Art Nouveau sculptures, 2 small figures stood out on one of the old wooden benches. At first glance, they looked like part of the square's winter decorations, perhaps another artistic installation the mayor's office loved so much. But then one of the figures moved, and Michael's heart skipped a beat. He slowed down even more, guiding the car toward the curb. The sight hit him like a punch to the gut. They were 2 little girls, identical twins, who could not have been more than 4 or 5 years old. They wore thin coats entirely unsuited for that frigid temperature, clinging to each other like helpless little birds trying to protect themselves from the storm. "My God," he muttered, parking the car hastily next to the sidewalk. On the other side of the street, in one of the old Victorian-style houses that still resisted the neighborhood's modernization, a lace curtain moved discreetly, but Michael was too focused on the children to notice. The biting wind hit him the moment he opened the car door, cutting through even his $3,000 Italian wool coat. His dark hair, usually meticulously styled, was immediately disheveled by the snow and wind. How could those children possibly be enduring this cold with so little protection? He approached slowly, aware that his height and formal appearance might frighten the girls. "Hello," he said softly, keeping his voice calm and gentle, much like he did when visiting the pediatric ward at the hospital his bank sponsored. "Are you two all right?" The twins shrank even more, as if trying to disappear into each other. Their faces were small mirrors of fear and distrust, but what struck Michael the most was how they communicated, not with words, but through quick, almost imperceptible glances, as if they shared a secret language only they understood. On the other side of the street, Betty Parker adjusted her reading glasses as she watched the scene unfold. At 65, after 4 decades as an elementary school teacher, she had developed a 6th sense for situations involving children. In recent days, she had noticed the little twins appearing in the square after nightfall, but something held her back from calling the authorities right away. Perhaps it was the way the girls protected each other, or maybe it was her own reluctance to potentially separate 2 children who were so close. "It's really cold out here," Michael continued, keeping a respectful distance. He noticed how the snow was piling up on their dark hair, forming tiny white crowns that melted slowly. "Can I help you? Are you hungry?" At the mention of food, a momentary sparkle lit up one of the girl's eyes, green and intense, carrying the weight of the world. The other immediately grabbed her sister's hand, a gesture that seemed both protective and restraining. Michael quickly returned to the car, his Italian shoes sinking into the snow that had already begun to accumulate on the sidewalk. On the passenger seat lay the sandwich he had bought earlier, a ritual he maintained for his late work nights. He also grabbed a bottle of mineral water and, most importantly, the spare coat from the back seat. Betty Parker moved closer to the window, her wrinkled fingers clutching the lace curtains her mother had made decades ago. In the faint glow of the night, she could see the reflection of the muted TV behind her, an old replay of some cooking show she wasn't really watching. Her eyes shifted between the little girls and the well-dressed man who had just arrived in his luxury car. "Emily," one of the girls whispered to the other, her voice so low Michael had to strain to hear. It was the first word spoken since he had arrived. "Sarah," the other answered in the same hushed tone, and Michael realized he was witnessing something extraordinary, a moment of decision between the two little ones, a communication far beyond words. He stepped a bit closer, offering the sandwich like a sacred offering. The one who seemed to be Emily, though he wasn't certain, reached out a trembling hand and took the food. With a precision that seemed almost rehearsed, they split the sandwich into meticulously equal portions, using their tiny fingers with surprising dexterity. As he watched the meat, Michael began to notice details he hadn't seen in the initial shock. Their dark hair was tangled and uncut, as if they hadn't seen a comb for weeks. There were smudges of dirt on their faces that the melting snow began to wash away, revealing skin that was much too pale. Small cuts and scratches marked their hands, some already healed, others still fresh. But their eyes disturbed him the most, those identical deep green eyes that seemed to hold too many stories for children so small. There was a mix of fear and resignation that made his heart clench. In the Victorian house, Betty Parker had pulled out a notepad from her writing desk. With the meticulousness of someone who spent a lifetime grading papers, she jotted down the Audi's license plate. She also noted the exact time and a brief description of the man, tall, well-dressed, probably in his early 30s. Her years as an educator had taught her to trust her instincts, and something about the scene deeply unsettled her. "You can't stay out here," Michael said after the girls finished eating, watching as they brushed crumbs off their clothes with identical, synchronized gestures. "It's too cold. Let me help. I have a big, warm house with food and—" He stopped mid-sentence when he saw the instant panic in their eyes. Sarah, or was it Emily, gripped her sister's hand even tighter, her small knuckles turning white from the strength of her hold. "I'm not going to hurt you," he promised, feeling an emotion he couldn't fully name, something between compassion, concern, and a deeper, almost primal instinct. "You can stay together the entire time. I just want to make sure you're safe and warm tonight." The twins exchanged another of those enigmatic glances that seemed to hold entire conversations. The snow was now falling harder, and Michael could see them trembling violently, their lips beginning to take on a worrying shade of blue. It was Sarah who made the decision for both. In a sudden move, she got up, pulling Emily with her. Michael quickly covered them with his spare coat, a long cashmere overcoat, large enough to wrap them both like an improvised blanket. As he led them to the car, he felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders, like the snow still falling around him. Part of his mind, the same part that had made him a successful banker, screamed that he should call the police right away. But something stronger, perhaps the same instinct that made him stop that night, told him he had to protect these children first. Betty Parker watched the black Audi RS7 drive away into the snowy night, carrying the little twins she had quietly been monitoring over the past few days. Her wrinkled hands trembled slightly as she typed the car's plate number into her old cell phone, one of the few technological luxuries she allowed herself. The Bennett mansion was an imposing neoclassical structure in one of the city's most exclusive neighborhoods. When Michael guided the car through the wrought iron gates, driving along the tree-lined driveway, he noticed the twins stirring in the back seat, their eyes wide as they took in the property with a mix of fear and awe. The house was silent and partly dark. Mrs. Rodriguez, the housekeeper who had worked for the Bennett family for more than 2 decades, had left early because of the weather, leaving only a few strategically placed lights on. Michael guided the girls inside, noticing how they moved in perfect synchrony, never straying more than a few inches from each other. In the spacious modern kitchen, he improvised as best he could. He found some instant soups in the pantry, something Mrs. Rodriguez kept for emergencies, and made hot chocolate while the twins sat huddled on the huge sofa in the adjacent living room, their eyes scanning the luxurious surroundings like tiny radars searching for threats or escape routes. The aroma of hot chocolate seemed to bring a bit of life to their expressions. They drank slowly, always sharing everything equally, always communicating through those silent glances that seemed to contain entire conversations. Michael noticed how their small hands trembled around the mugs, as if simply accepting comfort was a frightening act. After some silent negotiation, they agreed to take a bath, but only if they could stay together, and only after Michael showed them that the bathroom had 2 doors they could open if they wanted to leave. He left them with clean towels and some of his old t-shirts that would work as improvised nightgowns, giving them privacy but staying close enough to hear if they needed help. The sound of running water mixed with occasional whispers, the first real conversations he had heard between them, though he couldn't make out the words. There was something deeply moving in the way they depended on each other, as if they were 2 halves of the same whole. In the main guest room, decorated in soft shades of blue and beige, the twins finally began to show signs of exhaustion. Michael saw them fall asleep, curled up together on one of the king-size beds, looking even smaller amidst the Egyptian cotton sheets. Only then, watching them in the warm glow of a bedside lamp, did he start to notice the most troubling signs. They had old bruises on their arms, some already yellowish, others still greenish and purple. Their bodies were too small for their apparent ages, with visible ribs even through the oversized t-shirts. A series of small scars, some that looked like burns, dotted their arms and legs, telling silent stories of neglect or worse. In his downstairs office, Michael poured himself a finger of whiskey but didn't drink it. The amber liquid simply swirled in the glass as he spent the next few hours alternating between missing children websites and recent news about abandonment or abductions. To his surprise and growing concern, he found no record of missing twins matching Emily and Sarah's description. His searches led him to various articles about street children, statistics on child abandonment, and studies about twins. He learned that identical twins often developed private languages and deep connections scientists still couldn't fully understand. He read about cases of siblings who felt each other's pain, who dreamed the same dreams, who couldn't live apart. The sun was already painting the horizon in pink and gold hues when his phone vibrated, making him jump. The wheels of the first police cruiser skidded slightly on the snow covering the street in front of the Bennett mansion. The black and white car stopped abruptly, its lights flashing red and blue against the imposing facade. Seconds later, a second cruiser appeared from the right, followed immediately by a third from the left. The 3 vehicles formed a makeshift barricade at the property's gates, their sirens cutting through the stillness of the icy morning. Michael was in the kitchen making pancakes for the twins when the sound of sirens invaded the mansion. He ran to the security monitor and felt his heart nearly stop. 3 police cars completely blocked his driveway, their strobe lights casting dancing shadows on the walls of his office. From the first cruiser, Detective Jennifer Thompson stepped out, her graying hair pulled into a tight bun contrasting with her dark bulletproof vest. From the second car, 2 officers armed with assault rifles emerged. The third vehicle released 3 more officers who immediately took tactical positions around the property. "Michael Bennett," Thompson's voice boomed through a megaphone. "This is the police. We have a warrant. Come out with your hands where we can see them." Upstairs, the twins woke in fright at the noise. The sirens triggered a primal terror in their small bodies, and within seconds, they had disappeared beneath the king-size bed, trembling and clinging to each other in absolute silence. Michael watched on the monitor as the 3 police cars dominated his driveway, their lights reflecting off the mansion's bulletproof windows. He knew this moment would come. It was impossible to hide 2 children for long, especially for someone of his standing. "I'm coming out," he yelled into the intercom. "I'm opening the gates." The iron gates began to slide open slowly, revealing the 3 cruisers more clearly. The first, where Thompson was leaning, had the number 247 painted on the side. The second showed 3:15, its officers still holding rifles. The third, marked 4:29, kept its engine running, ready for anything. Thompson signaled, and 6 officers advanced in formation along the gravel driveway, which crunched under their boots. 3 kept their weapons at a low ready, while the others scanned the property's surroundings. Michael opened the main door before they reached the marble steps. He wore dress pants and a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves, trying to look as harmless as possible. "Detective Jennifer Thompson," she introduced herself, her badge gleaming against her vest. "We received an anonymous tip about 2 minors in your residence." "I can explain everything," Michael replied, keeping his voice calm despite the evident tension. Through the living room windows, he could still see the 3 cruisers, their lights flashing frantically. "I found the girls last night, alone in the central square. It was snowing, they were freezing." "Hands where we can see them, Mr. Bennett," one of the officers from the second car interrupted, his hand still on his weapon's grip. Thompson coordinated everything through the radio clipped to her vest. "Unit 247, maintain front position. 3:15, continue interior sweep. 4:29, ensure no one escapes out back." Upstairs, the specialized team tried to establish contact with the twins. A female officer knelt near the bed, speaking in a soft voice. "Emily, Sarah, it's all right, sweethearts. No one's going to hurt you." Silence was the only answer. Only the frightened green eyes of the girls were visible in the dim space under the bed, their small bodies so close they seemed to meld into one another. Thompson led Michael to the makeshift interrogation area in the mansion's library. Through the window, the 3 cruisers' lights still flashed, creating a surreal atmosphere amid shelves of old books. "Why didn't you call the police immediately, Mr. Bennett?" Thompson began, her tone professional but not hostile. "They were terrified," Michael explained, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "They could barely speak. I had to earn their trust first. If I had called the police right then..." "Do you realize your actions, however well-intentioned, can be interpreted very seriously?" Thompson interrupted. "A single man taking 2 unknown children into his home in the middle of the night." Across the street, Betty Parker watched everything through her lace curtains. The 3 police cars, their lights still reflecting against the falling snow, seemed to confirm she had done the right thing by reporting. But why did her heart feel so heavy? Her wrinkled hands trembled as she held an old photo album. On its yellowed pages, a young woman smiled, her green eyes identical to the twins. Betty closed the album with determination, as if trying to contain the memories threatening to escape. At the mansion, the situation began to shift when one of the social workers made a small breakthrough with the twins. Sarah, the braver of the 2, reached out to take some chocolate offered to her. It was at that moment Thompson returned to the bedroom. "Mr. Bennett," she called, observing the interaction closely. "The girls seem to trust you, at least a little. That's unusual, given the circumstances." Michael took a step forward, always keeping his hands visible. "Emily? Sarah? It's okay. Detective Thompson is here to help." To everyone's surprise, Sarah slowly emerged from under the bed, pulling Emily along. Their green eyes stayed fixed on Michael, as if seeking confirmation that everything was truly all right. Thompson didn't miss that detail. In 20 years on the force, she had developed a 6th sense for distinguishing criminals from good Samaritans. And something about the interaction between Bennett and the twins didn't fit the typical predator profile. "We need to continue our investigation," she announced after a few hours of observation and preliminary questioning. "But given the special circumstances and the apparent bond between you and the girls, I'll allow them to remain in the house under police supervision." The 3 cruisers stayed parked in front of the Bennett mansion for the rest of the day, their lights now off but their presence still imposing. Occasionally, a news van drove by slowly, photographers trying to capture images of what the local media was already calling the Bennett twins mystery. That night, after an exhausting day of testimonies and preliminary investigations, Thompson watched the twins through the living room's glass wall. They had refused to eat anything that didn't come from Michael, and now they slept on the couch, still wearing the oversized shirts he had loaned them. "We checked your background," she told Michael, who was by her side. You're as clean as a 30-year-old single malt. What about the girls? He asked, his worry evident. Did you find anything? Thompson shook her head. Nothing yet. It's like they appeared out of nowhere. No missing child report for twin girls matching their description, no DNA in the system. At the Victorian house, Betty finally made a decision. She picked up the phone and dialed a number she hadn't used in years. After several rings, an answering machine picked up. This is the office of social worker Sarah Martinez. I'm currently unavailable. Betty hung up before leaving a message. Tomorrow she would tell everything she knew about the twins and their mother. But for now, watching the 3 police cruisers still on guard in front of the Bennett mansion, she decided the girls deserved one more night of peace. Michael spent the night on the couch next to the twins, under the watchful eye of an officer from Cruiser 315. When Emily had a nightmare, it was his soft voice that calmed her, along with Sarah's embraces. The Bennett twins' mystery was only beginning. And somewhere in the city, Betty Parker held the key to the entire puzzle, wrestling with her own demons and memories as she decided when to reveal the truth she possessed. Detective Jennifer Thompson fixed her gaze on her computer screen, rereading the report she had just received for the 3rd time. Her fingers drummed nervously on the desk as the puzzle pieces began to fit together. Rachel Collins, she murmured the name, savoring the first solid lead in days of investigation. How did we miss this before? The report was clear. Rachel Collins, 28 years old, killed in a car accident exactly 1 month ago. The vehicle had skidded on a curve during a storm, rolling over several times before stopping in a ditch. Rachel died instantly. Her twin daughters, Emily and Sarah Collins, age 4, were not in the car at the time of the accident. Thompson picked up the phone, her hands slightly shaking with the urgency of the discovery. I need all the files on the Collins case. Yes, last month's accident. And locate the social worker assigned to the children. At the Bennett mansion, Michael watched the twins playing in the sunroom, under the constant supervision of 2 police officers. Over the past few days, Emily and Sarah had begun to open up slightly, though they still mostly communicated through their silent glances. The doorbell rang, and Michael already knew who it was before he even opened the door. Thompson entered with a thick folder under her arm, her face more serious than usual. We found out who they are, she announced without preamble. The next few hours were a whirlwind of revelations. Thompson spread photographs and documents across the library table. In one photo, a young dark-haired woman with green eyes smiled for the camera, holding 2 newborn babies. Rachel Collins, Thompson explained, watching Michael's reaction carefully. Single mother, worked as a music teacher, died in a car crash a month ago. Michael felt a tightness in his chest as he looked at the photograph. There was something familiar about her face, something he couldn't quite define. The girls were in a temporary shelter, Thompson continued. They ran away 2 weeks ago. No one could find them until now. Across the street, Betty Parker watched the movements at the mansion through her window. She saw Thompson arrive with the folder she knew contained the truth about Rachel. Her wrinkled hands gripped the belt of her robe as memories flooded her mind. Rachel had been more than a neighbor. She was almost a daughter. Betty had watched her grow from a rebellious teenager into a devoted young mother. She remembered the day Rachel appeared on her doorstep, pregnant and scared, needing a shoulder to cry on. So you have to tell him, Rachel had said that distant night, gently touching her visibly pregnant belly. He has the right to know. But Betty had kept her promise to keep the secret, even after the twins were born, even after Rachel left. Now, watching Michael through her window, she wondered if she had made the right choice. In the mansion's library, Thompson continued her account. The shelter reported that the girls refused to be separated. When staff tried to place them in different rooms, they had a panic attack so severe they needed medical intervention. Michael thought about the nights the twins woke up screaming for Mommy. Now it all made sense. Did they see the accident? He asked, dreading the answer. Thompson shook her head. No. They were at school when it happened, but since then, it's as if they shut themselves off in their own little world. In the sunroom, Emily and Sarah had stopped playing. As if sensing something important was happening, they clung to each other, their green eyes the same green as Rachel's, fixed on the library door. "What happens now?" Michael asked, a sudden fear gripping him. The idea of losing the girls, after everything they had been through together, was unbearable. "Technically, they should return to the system," Thompson said, her professional tone masking obvious sympathy. "But given the trauma they've suffered and the unusual bond they seem to have with you..." Betty Parker watched as Thompson left the mansion hours later. She took out her old photo album, flipping through it until she found one specific image. Rachel at 16, seated at the piano in the Collins house. The resemblance to the twins was striking. That night, Michael sat with the girls in their makeshift bed in the guest room. Emily held one of the teddy bears he had bought, while Sarah absent-mindedly twirled a lock of her own hair, a gesture so reminiscent of their mother in the photos that it almost hurt. "You miss her, don't you?" he asked softly. It was the first time the twins cried in front of him. Not hysterical tears of fear or nightmares, but silent tears of a grief too profound for children so young to fully understand. Michael wrapped them in his arms, feeling their small bodies shake with stifled sobs. "It's okay," he whispered. "It's okay to cry." Back at her desk in the precinct, Thompson continued her investigation. Something about the story still didn't quite add up. Why had the twins run away specifically to this area of the city? Why, among all the people who might have helped them, had fate brought them to Michael Bennett? Betty Parker remained at her window, the weight of the secret she carried growing heavier by the day. On her desk lay a sealed envelope containing a letter Rachel had left, to be delivered only if something happened to her. "Not yet," Betty muttered, watching the lights in the Bennett mansion. "It's not time yet." Michael spent the night researching Rachel Collins on his laptop. He found articles about piano recitals she had performed, photos of graduations, small mentions in local newspapers. In every image, that persistent sense of familiarity haunted him. The twins slept curled up together as always, but something had changed. It was as if part of the burden had been lifted from their small shoulders, the burden of the secret of who they were, of their mother, of their past. Thompson closed the last file on the case, but one question still bothered her. On the twins' birth certificate, the father field was blank. Rachel had never revealed the man's identity, not even to her best friend Betty Parker. The Bennett twins' mystery was far from solved. And as the snow continued falling over the city, 3 people lay awake, each holding a different piece of the truth. Michael with his unanswered questions, Thompson with her growing suspicions, and Betty with her secret that could change everything. In the guest room, Emily and Sarah slept the innocent sleep of children, oblivious to the revelations and mysteries surrounding them. In their dreams, perhaps, Rachel's smile still shone, her green eyes full of a love that not even death could erase. Michael couldn't sleep. The name Collins echoed in his mind like a familiar song, whose lyrics he couldn't quite recall. It was 2 in the morning when he decided to go down to his father's office, a room he seldom visited since taking over the bank's presidency. The office remained exactly as Charles Bennett had left it, the same leather-bound books on mahogany shelves, the same Persian rug beneath the heavy desk, the same faint smell of tobacco ingrained in the wood. Michael turned on the bronze desk lamp, and shadows danced across the dark green wallpaper. "There has to be something here," he muttered to himself, opening the first drawer of the desk. His father had been methodical to the point of obsession. He kept records of everything, from dry cleaning receipts to trivial correspondence. In the silent mansion, only the ticking of the grandfather clock and the occasional creak of the hardwood floor broke the stillness. Upstairs, the twins slept in their makeshift bed, now surrounded by stuffed animals and children's books. Small comforts Michael had provided in recent days. The third drawer revealed a series of folders organized by year. Michael began leafing through them methodically, his tired eyes scanning dates and names. Then a photograph slipped from between the pages of an old contract. His heart nearly stopped. The image showed the Bennett mansion during a Christmas party, likely in the early 90s. Garlands and lights decorated the main staircase, and staff posed, smiling for the camera. In the center, A middle-aged woman wearing a housekeeper's uniform stood out, not because of her position, but because of her clearly visible pregnancy. Michael turned the photo over. On the back, in elegant handwriting, it read, "Christmas Party, 1995, Bennett Mansion Staff, Grace Collins, Head Housekeeper." Collins. His hands trembled as he looked for more photographs. He soon found others. Grace supervising the garden decorations, Grace organizing a summer luncheon, Grace always present, always close to the Bennett family. In some older images, she appeared alongside Charles Bennett, discussing what looked like to-do lists or menus. "How did I never know about her?" Michael whispered to the empty office. He had only been 3 years old in 1995, and his memories of the mansion at that time were fragmentary, more sensations than clear images. He continued his search with renewed urgency. At the bottom of a drawer, he found a metal box with a lock. The key, knowing his father, should be there, he smiled. Reaching into the false bottom of the first drawer, another one of Charles Bennett's methodical habits. Inside the box, he found a folder marked simply Collins. His heart pounded so hard, it felt like it might burst from his chest. The first page was an employment contract, employment agreement, Grace Collins position, head housekeeper start date, January 15th, 1980. Michael did a quick mental calculation. Grace had worked in the mansion for 15 years, leaving only in 1995. The year she was pregnant in that Christmas photo. The year Rachel would have been conceived. The implications of that discovery hit him like a punch in the gut. He recalled Rachel's face in the photos Thompson had shown him, that nagging sense of familiarity, the same green eyes now visible in Emily and Sarah. A soft noise made him look up. Sarah stood at the door, her little bare feet silent on the rug. "Can't sleep?" Michael asked gently. Sarah shook her head, walking closer with curiosity. Her eyes, Rachel's eyes, Grace's eyes, scanned the photographs scattered on the desk. "Grandma," she said suddenly, pointing to one of the photos of Grace. Michael felt his world spin. It was the first time Sarah had spontaneously spoken about family. "How you knew your grandma, Grace?" Sarah nodded, picking up the photo with almost reverent care. Seconds later, Emily appeared in the doorway. Just as always, one twin never stayed away from the other for long. "Mommy used to show pictures," Emily explained in a quiet voice, joining her sister, "of Grandma in the big house." "This house?" Michael asked, his heart racing even faster. The twins nodded in unison. Emily picked up another photograph, this one showing Grace with Charles Bennett at what looked like a summer party. "Grandma and the serious man," Sarah commented. Michael looked at the photo with new eyes. His father, always so austere and formal, wore a faint smile while pointing to something on a list Grace held. There was an intimacy in the scene he had never noticed before. The girls settled naturally in his lap as he continued examining documents. He found extra payment receipts, invoices for expensive gifts, even a deed to a house in the city's suburbs in Grace Collins's name. "Did your mother talk about Grandma Grace?" he asked gently. "Mommy was sad," Emily answered, fiddling with the hem of the oversized t-shirt she wore as pajamas. "She said Grandma went to heaven when she was little." Sarah added, "Just like Mommy now." Michael hugged the girls more tightly, feeling their small bodies relax against him. It was astonishing how, in just a few days, they had gone from absolute terror to this level of trust. He continued going through the documents, now with the twins fast asleep in his lap. He discovered that Grace had received a generous pension after leaving her job, far above the normal amount for a domestic worker. He also found letters, several of them, kept in a yellowed envelope. He was about to open the first one when a movement at the window caught his attention. Across the street in the Victorian house, a light had turned on. For a moment, he clearly saw the face of an elderly woman watching the mansion, Betty Parker, the mysterious neighbor who had made the anonymous report. What role did she play in all this? Why was she watching the mansion so intently? And why, even after discovering the twins were safe, did she continue her silent vigil? Hours passed as Michael delved deeper into the past. Grace Collins had been more than just a housekeeper. She practically ran the mansion, having direct access to Charles Bennett and participating in decisions far beyond her normal duties. In one of the letters, dated December 1995, Grace wrote, "Dear Charles, I can't go on like this. What's growing inside me is bigger than both of us. You have your family, your reputation, your legacy. I have to protect mine. Always yours, Grace." Michael reread the letter several times, the implications making his stomach turn. The dates, the photographs, the generous pension, the expensive gifts. It all pointed to a conclusion he barely dared consider. The sun was beginning to rise when he finally mustered the courage to open the last document in the box. It was a DNA test, never completed, with samples identified only by initials, CB and RC, Charles Bennett and Rachel Collins. The twins stirred in his lap, waking up to the first rays of sunlight entering the office window. Michael looked at their sleepy faces, the same delicate features he had seen in photos of Grace, the same green eyes he now realized were a hallmark of both the Collins and the Bennetts. Emily stretched, seeming perfectly at home in a place that, just days earlier, had terrified her. Sarah, still sleepy, pointed to one of the photos of Grace. "Can we keep one?" she asked timidly. "Of course you can," Michael replied, his voice thick with emotion. "This is your house now." The girls smiled, one of those rare, precious smiles he was learning to treasure. There was no longer any doubt in their gaze, only a growing trust that made Michael's heart ache in a strangely good way. Across the street, Betty Parker watched the sunrise, her old photo album open in her lap. On one of its pages, a young Grace Collins beamed, pregnant and radiant, next to her teenage daughter Rachel. The secret Betty had guarded for so many years was about to come to light. In the mansion, Michael carefully stored the documents, except for the photos the twins had chosen. As he watched them ascend the stairs hand in hand, talking in their private language of half smiles and knowing looks, a certainty formed in his heart. No matter what those documents revealed, no matter what secrets the past still held, Emily and Sarah were his family now, and he would do anything to protect them. The doorbell echoed through the Bennett mansion on a particularly cold winter morning. Michael, who was helping the twins with their breakfast, felt a chill run down his spine when he saw, through the security monitor, a middle-aged woman with brown hair tied in a severe bun, carrying an official-looking folder. "Good morning. I'm Sarah Martinez from Child Protective Services," she introduced herself as soon as Michael opened the door. Her tone was professional, but her brown eyes scanned every detail of her surroundings. "I'm here to discuss the Collins twins' situation." Michael felt his stomach drop. He knew this moment would come, but not so soon. "Please, come in. But I should warn you, the girls are extremely wary of strangers." In the kitchen, Emily and Sarah stopped eating their pancakes the moment they heard the unfamiliar voice. Their green eyes met in one of those silent dialogues only they understood. Before Michael could say anything, they were gone. "Does that happen often?" Sarah Martinez asked, noting the abandoned plates on the table. "They're making progress," Michael explained, his voice calm despite his growing nervousness. "A week ago, they barely spoke. Now they talk to me, they play, they even smile sometimes." Martinez took a notepad from her folder. "Mr. Bennett, I need to be clear. The current situation is highly irregular. 2 minors under the unofficial care of a single man with no proven family ties." "About that?" Michael interrupted. "I've found some documents that might indicate a family connection. Grace Collins, the girl's grandmother, worked here at the mansion for 15 years. The social worker raised an eyebrow. "Interesting but irrelevant to the immediate legal status. I've come to take the twins back into the foster system." The panic Michael felt must have shown on his face, because Martinez softened her tone slightly. "I understand you've grown attached to them, Mr. Bennett, but there are procedures that must be followed." "Please," Michael pleaded. "At least let me show you how well they're doing here, how they've improved." Martinez checked her watch. "You have 15 minutes. Michael led her through the mansion's first floor, showing the spaces the twins had begun to claim. The living room now had a basket of toys in one corner. The library had gained a low shelf of children's books. The kitchen displayed colorful drawings taped to the refrigerator. "Emily?" he called softly. Sarah? It's okay, sweethearts. You can come out. A slight movement behind the curtains in the music room caught Martinez's attention. The twins were hiding there, huddled together as always, their green eyes watching the social worker with a mix of fear and distrust. "Hello, girls," Martinez tried, her professional voice masking years of experience with traumatized children. "I'm Sarah. I came to see how you're doing." The twins drew closer together, their small bodies practically merging. Michael took a step toward them, and something extraordinary happened. Instead of recoiling as they did with any adult, the girls reached out their hands to him. Martinez watched closely as Michael knelt by the curtains, keeping a respectful distance. "It's all right," he whispered. "No one will hurt you. I promise." Sarah, the braver twin, was the first to emerge, pulling Emily along. Their tiny hands clung to Michael's shirt as though he were an anchor in a storm. "They only trust him," an elderly voice commented from the doorway. Martinez turned to see Detective Thompson, who had just arrived. The veteran officer had continued monitoring the case even after initial discoveries about the girls' identities. "Jennifer," Martinez greeted, "I didn't know you were still involved." "There's something special here," Thompson replied, her experienced eyes assessing the scene. "In 20 years on the force, I've never seen traumatized children recover so quickly." The twins, still clinging to Michael, watched the adults' conversation with obvious apprehension. Emily began trembling slightly, and Sarah immediately hugged her more tightly. "Mrs. Martinez," Michael spoke, his voice firm despite the fear he felt. "I know this situation is irregular. I know there are procedures, but look at them. Do you really think yanking these children out of yet another place where they feel safe is the best solution?" Martinez consulted her notes. The shelter report said they refused to eat, wouldn't sleep, and panicked if someone tried to separate them. "And now," Thompson interjected, "look at the fridge, the drawings. See how they move around the house, how they don't hide all the time." As if to confirm Thompson's words, Sarah whispered something in Emily's ear, who nodded timidly. They walked hand in hand to the toy basket, where Sarah pulled out a drawing. "For you," she said softly, extending the paper to Martinez. The social worker took the drawing carefully. It showed the mansion with 5 figures in front, 2 small ones holding hands, obviously the twins, a taller figure representing Michael, and 2 figures in the sky, labeled in childish handwriting as Mommy and Grandma. Martinez felt her professional resolve waver. In 15 years of social work, she had learned to identify when children genuinely felt safe. "Mr. Bennett," she finally said, "what exactly are you proposing?" "Temporary custody," he replied without hesitation. "I've already contacted specialized lawyers. I can provide whatever is necessary: psychological evaluations, home adjustments, educational support." "It's not that simple," Martinez argued, though her tone was less harsh now. "There are strict requirements for temporary custody, especially in complex cases like this." Across the street, Betty Parker watched the scene through her lace curtains. She recognized Martinez immediately. They had worked together years ago, back when Betty was still teaching. Her wrinkled fingers tightened around her robe's belt as she saw the twins gravitating closer to Michael. "I can set some conditions," Martinez continued after a long pause. "Weekly visits, mandatory therapy for the girls, regular evaluations of the home environment." "I accept all conditions," Michael responded without hesitation. "Whatever it takes to keep them safe and well cared for." Thompson, who had been quietly observing, noticed how the twins visibly relaxed upon realizing they wouldn't be taken away. It was yet another confirmation of her police instincts. There was something special in the connection between Bennett and the girls. Martinez spent the next hour listing her requirements: a suitable bedroom for the twins, though they could share given their unique situation, a structured routine, regular medical checkups, weekly psychological evaluations, and detailed reports on their progress. "And we need to investigate more thoroughly this supposed family connection," she added, jotting notes in her pad. "If there really is a link to the Bennett family, it could simplify the legal process." Michael nodded, thinking of the documents he had discovered the night before, but that was a revelation for another moment. His priority now was ensuring the twins could stay. One more thing, Martinez said, her tone softening further as she saw Emily discreetly yawning in Michael's arms. You'll need help. You can't do this alone, no matter how good your intentions. I can hire a housekeeper, private tutors, anything necessary, Michael offered immediately. It's not just that, Martinez explained. These girls lost their mother only a month ago. They need an emotional support network, not just logistics. Almost on cue, Sarah reached out and gently touched Michael's face, a gesture so full of trust and affection that even the seasoned social worker felt her eyes fill with tears. I'll prepare the preliminary documents, Martinez announced, putting away her notepad. But let me be clear. This is a temporary arrangement. Any sign the girls aren't receiving proper care. I fully understand, Michael interrupted, and I appreciate the chance. Thompson walked Martinez out to her car. The two professionals exchanged a significant look. Both had seen enough cases to know when something was genuine. Keep an eye on them, Martinez asked the detective. My gut says we made the right decision, but we have to be sure, Thompson completed. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere until all the mysteries of this house are resolved. Back in the mansion, Michael helped the twins finish their now cold breakfast pancakes. Emily and Sarah ate with more appetite than they had shown in days, as if a burden had been lifted from their small shoulders. Betty Parker watched Martinez's car drive away, silent tears rolling down her wrinkled cheeks. In her lap, the envelope containing the truth about Rachel and the twins felt heavier than ever. But seeing how the girls were finally making progress, how they seemed to have found some peace, she decided her secret could wait a little longer. Michael spent the rest of the day on the phone with his lawyers, officially starting the process for temporary custody. Between calls, he noticed how the twins were becoming more relaxed, playing with their teddy bears on the living room rug, occasionally glancing his way as if to confirm he was still there. That night, when he tucked them into bed, now decorated with princess sheets and a growing collection of plushies, Sarah held his hand a moment longer than usual. You promised, she said simply. Promised what, sweetie? Michael asked gently. That nobody would hurt us, Emily answered, her small voice firm. That we could stay. Michael felt his heart swell with emotion. And I'll keep that promise, he assured them, adjusting the blanket over both. You're safe here. This is your home now. The twins smiled, that rare, precious smile he was learning to treasure more each day, and as he watched them drift off to sleep, Michael silently promised Rachel, wherever she might be, her daughters would be loved, protected, and happy. In her city office, Martinez drafted her preliminary report on the case. Her words were carefully chosen, balancing the necessary professionalism with the undeniable reality she had witnessed. Despite the severe recent trauma, Emily and Sarah Collins show positive signs of recovery in their current environment. The bond developed with Mr. Michael Bennett, while unconventional, provides tangible emotional benefits for their development. I strongly recommend continuing the current arrangement under regular supervision. Thompson, at her desk in the precinct, made her own notes. Something about the Collins family history still intrigued her, and she had a hunch that Michael's discoveries about Grace were just the tip of a much larger iceberg. The Bennett twins' mystery, as the local media insisted on calling it, was far from over. But that night, at least, 2 little girls slept safely. A man discovered the true meaning of family, and an elderly neighbor held a secret that, when revealed, would change everything. Outside, snow continued to fall softly over the city, covering everything in a white mantle, as if trying to smooth out the edges of the past and give everyone a new start. Thomas Chen's office was on the 20th floor of a commercial building downtown. Michael watched the private investigator read the documents he had brought, each page turned with the meticulous care of experienced fingers. Fascinating, Chen murmured, adjusting his thin-rimmed glasses. 15 years of meticulously kept records. Your father was a very detailed man. Michael nodded, thinking of the twins he had left at home under the care of the new housekeeper. I need to know everything about Grace Collins and her daughter Rachel. Every detail, every connection to my family. Chen organized the documents into neat piles. The payments are the most intriguing. Not just a normal housekeeper's salary, but regular transfers to an offshore account. They started in 1995, exactly when Grace left the mansion. Michael felt his stomach churn. 1995. The year Grace was pregnant in the Christmas photo. The year Rachel would have been conceived. "I want a full investigation," he said, his voice unwavering. "School records, medical history, property deeds, bank accounts, everything." "That might raise some red flags," Chen cautioned, "especially now that you're seeking temporary custody of the twins." "That's why I hired the best," Michael replied. "I need absolute discretion." Back at the mansion, he found Sarah Martinez conducting her weekly evaluation. The twins were playing in the sunroom, more at ease than he had ever seen them. Emily was drawing while Sarah stacked colorful blocks. "They're making extraordinary progress," Martinez noted, writing in her clipboard. Their child psychologist reports significant improvements in verbal communication. Michael observed how the twins occasionally exchanged glances and smiles, their silent language still there, but no longer their only means of expression. "Emily asked to paint the bedroom lilac yesterday," he said, unable to hide his pride. "It's the first time she's expressed such a clear preference," Martinez smiled. "That's excellent. Establishing a sense of belonging is crucial for traumatized children." That night, after putting the twins to bed, Michael returned to his father's office. Chen's words about the offshore payments troubled him. He opened his laptop and started reviewing old bank records, a perk of being the president. His phone vibrated, a message from Chen. "I've found something. Grace Collins's hospital records, 1995. You need to see this." Michael barely slept that night. When dawn broke, he was already back at Chen's office, his hands trembling slightly as he took the documents. "Complications during pregnancy," Chen explained, pointing to a medical report. "Grace was admitted to Central Hospital in October 1995. Guess who paid all the bills?" "My father," Michael said, though it wasn't really a question. "Through a corporate account at the bank. Well hidden, but the trail is there." Meanwhile, at the mansion, Emily and Sarah explored their newly painted lilac bedroom. The change in their behavior was remarkable. From terrified children who hid from everyone, they had transformed into distinct little personalities, still deeply connected, but each beginning to flourish on her own. "Look," Sarah exclaimed, finding an old box in the back of the built-in closet. Michael, who had just returned, watched as the girls opened the box with childlike curiosity. Inside were more old photographs, some he had never seen before. "Is this Grandma Grace?" Emily asked, holding up a yellowed picture. Michael took the photo carefully. It showed a much younger Grace, probably in the early 80s, smiling beside Charles Bennett in a picnic setting. There was an intimacy in the image that made his heart ache. "Mr. Bennett," the new housekeeper called from the door. "Investigator Chen is on the phone. He says it's urgent." In the library, Michael answered with apprehension. "What did you find?" "I uncovered the records of a house," Chen said, "bought by your father in 1995, put in Grace's name. But the most interesting part is Rachel's school records." Michael gripped the phone tighter. "What about them?" "All her tuition was paid through an educational foundation controlled by the Bennetts, from preschool through her music conservatory. Your father funded her entire education, always through intermediaries." Michael's head was spinning. Each discovery confirmed his suspicions, but also raised new questions. Sarah Martinez arrived for another evaluation, finding the twins playing school, Emily as the teacher, Sarah as the attentive student. "Their transformation is remarkable," Martinez commented, watching the girls' carefree laughter, something unthinkable a few weeks ago. "But I notice you seem worried, Mr. Bennett." Michael hesitated. Martinez had become an important ally, but how much could he reveal? "I'm investigating their past," he finally admitted. "There are connections to my family I need to understand." Martinez frowned. "Be careful. The girls have just found stability. A revelation too big or too sudden could upset that balance." As if to illustrate her point, Emily ran to Michael at that moment, holding up a drawing. "Look, this is our family." The drawing depicted the mansion with several figures, the twins, Michael, and in the sky, Rachel and Grace. But there was also a more distant figure, a man in a suit Emily had labeled Grandpa. "Who's this, sweetie?" Michael asked softly. "The man in the photos," Sarah answered for her sister. "The one who was always with Grandma Grace." Martinez observed with professional interest. Children often process family connections through art, she remarked, even connections they don't fully understand. That night, after the twins fell asleep, Michael again pored over the old photographs. One particularly telling image showed Grace and his father sitting on a garden bench. Charles Bennett's hand rested on Grace's in a way that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. His phone vibrated with another text from Chen. "I found Grace Collins's will. You need to see it immediately." Michael looked at the monitor in the twins' room, where Emily and Sarah slept peacefully, entwined as always. How much would their lives change with the discoveries he was about to make? Across the street, in the Victorian house, a light was still on. Betty Parker kept her silent vigil, watching the Bennett mansion as she had for so many years. In her hands, a sealed envelope held the answers Michael was seeking so desperately. "Tomorrow," she decided. "Tomorrow I'll finally reveal all I know about Grace Collins, Rachel, and the secret Charles Bennett took to his grave." For now, Michael continued his investigation, each new finding drawing him closer to a truth that would change not only his life, but also the future of the two little twins who had, inexplicably yet so perfectly, become his family. Betty Parker adjusted the collar of her wool coat as she climbed the worn steps of the police station. Her wrinkled hands clutched an old leather bag holding decades' worth of memories, carefully preserved in photographs and letters. The weight of those recollections felt heavier than ever on that winter morning. "May I help you, ma'am?" asked a young officer at the reception desk, noting the elderly woman who looked a bit lost. "I need to speak with Detective Thompson," Betty replied, her voice firm despite her nerves. "It's about the Bennett twins case." Minutes later, Jennifer Thompson led Betty into her office, noticing how the older woman clutched her bag as though it contained a precious treasure. "I was the one who made the anonymous report," Betty began, without beating around the bush. "And I should have come sooner, but I needed to be sure the girls would be safe." Thompson switched on her recorder, sensing she was about to hear something critical. "Why didn't you come sooner, Miss Parker?" "Because I promised Rachel I'd look after her girls," Betty answered, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "And sometimes, looking after someone means watching from afar, making sure they're truly in good hands." Opening her bag, Betty began removing photographs. The first showed a young Rachel Collins, maybe 16, sitting at a piano in Betty's home. Her smile was identical to the occasional smile Emily and Sarah displayed. "Rachel was like a daughter to me," Betty continued. "I met Grace when she still worked at the Bennett mansion. We were neighbors, you know. Grace was always reserved about her job, but she cared for Rachel with so much love, so much devotion." Thompson jotted down notes quickly, realizing she was finally filling in the gaps of the case. "When was the last time you saw Rachel?" 3 days before the accident," Betty replied, her voice trembling. "She brought the girls over for tea, as she did every week. Emily had learned a new song on the piano. She's just like her mother, that one, Music in Her Soul. Sarah was drawing, always so quiet, observing everything." The detective noted how Betty spoke of the twins with familiarity, like someone who truly knew them well. "Did you watch them after the accident?" "Every day," Betty confessed. "When I found out they had run away from the shelter, I knew they'd come here. This was where they felt safe, where they had happy memories with their mum." Meanwhile, back at the Bennett mansion, Michael received another report from investigator Chen. The discoveries about Grace Collins kept accumulating, each more intriguing than the last. "Your father kept an apartment downtown," Chen explained over the phone. "Registered to a shell company, but payments came from his personal account. Guess who lived there in the 90s? Michael felt his heart race. "Grace." "Exactly. And later, Rachel, too. All expenses covered via offshore accounts. Your father was meticulous about keeping it off the official records." At the station, Betty continued her story, now showing Thompson more photos. "Rachel was a music teacher. Did you know that? She had a natural talent. The girls inherited it. If you saw them at the piano, Detective, it's like Rachel is there, playing through them." "Why did you decide to report Mr. Bennett when you saw him with the girls?" Thompson asked. Betty sighed deeply. Because I needed to be sure. Rachel always said her girls were special, that they needed extra protection. When I saw this rich man taking them in the middle of the night, well, anyone would be suspicious, right? But now you've changed your mind. I've been watching for weeks, Betty confirmed. I've seen how he treats them, how they've blossomed under his care. It's like it was meant to be. Thompson paused, choosing her next words carefully. Ms. Parker, do you know anything about the twins' father's identity? Betty shook her head. Rachel never spoke about it. It hurt her deeply. Maybe Grace knew, but she took that secret to her grave. At the mansion, Emily and Sarah played in the sunroom when they noticed movement in the neighboring house. Emily pointed to the window where Betty usually watched. It's the tea lady, Sarah whispered to her sister. Mommy used to take us there. Michael, who was supervising their play, noticed the girls' interest. Do you know that lady? Emily nodded. She has a piano. She always made chocolate chip cookies. That simple piece of information made Michael pick up his phone immediately. Within minutes, he was talking to Thompson. The girls remember her, he explained, watching Emily and Sarah still gazing toward Betty's house. They say they used to visit her with Rachel. Mr. Bennett, Thompson replied. Miss Parker is here with me right now, and I think we all need to have a conversation. Hours later, Betty Parker entered the Bennett mansion for the first time in decades. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her bag, but her eyes shone at the sight of the twins. Emily was the first to fully recognize her. Miss Betty? She exclaimed, running toward her with a spontaneity that surprised everyone. Sarah followed, more cautious but clearly intrigued. My little musicians, Betty smiled, tears rolling down her wrinkled cheeks. You've grown so much. Sarah Martinez, who was present to observe professionally, jotted down notes in her clipboard. The twins' reaction to Betty was remarkable. They showed recognition, trust, and positive memories. Weekly visits were a constant in their lives, Betty explained as everyone settled in the living room. Rachel believed it was important for the girls to have a routine, people they could rely on. After Grace passed, we became even closer. Michael watched the interaction, fascinated. Why didn't you come forward earlier? Fear, Betty admitted. When I saw you with them that night, every protective instinct in me went into overdrive. Rachel always said we had to be extra cautious with the girls. There was something she was afraid of, though she never told me exactly what. Thompson, also there, noticed Michael's reaction to that information. Mr. Bennett, is there something you'd like to share? Michael hesitated, glancing at the twins, who were now enthusiastically showing Betty their latest drawings of their mother. I've been discovering some things about the past, about Grace, her connection to my family. Betty looked up, suddenly very interested. Grace worked here when Rachel was born. She never talked much about that time, but she always made sure Rachel had everything she needed. It was like someone was looking out for them from a distance. My father, Michael finished gently. Charles Bennett. A heavy silence fell over the room. Betty seemed to process this information, her hands gripping her bag even tighter. He used to visit sometimes, she finally revealed. Never came in, just watched from his car. Rachel called him the man in the black car. I didn't know who he really was. Sarah Martinez took more notes, observing how the pieces were falling into place. The presence of a familiar figure like Miss Parker could be extremely beneficial for the twins, she said. Especially now during this transitional period. As if confirming her assessment, Emily walked up to Betty with a piece of sheet music. Can you show us again? She asked timidly. The song Mommy used to play? Betty looked at Michael for approval. He nodded, moved by the connection forming before his eyes. In the music room, Betty began playing a gentle melody on the piano. Emily and Sarah came closer, their green eyes, Rachel's eyes, Grace's eyes, fixed on the keys. Rachel played this for them every night, Betty explained, her voice thick with emotion. She said it was a special lullaby passed down from Grace. Michael watched them, feeling his heart tighten. Somewhere in his memory, the melody felt familiar, perhaps something he had heard echoing in the mansion's halls long ago, when Grace was still the housekeeper. Thompson used the musical interlude to pull Michael aside. "Has Chen found anything else?" "Lots of documents," Michael confirmed in a low voice. "Regular payments, properties, offshore accounts. My father supported Grace and Rachel for years, always behind the scenes." "And the will?" Thompson prompted. "Chen is decoding the legal details, but there's something about a trust fund set up for Rachel and her possible descendants." Betty, now teaching Emily the correct finger positions on the piano, seemed unaware of the adults' conversation. She was completely focused on the twins, on how Sarah watched her sister proudly, on how Emily bit her lip in concentration, just like Rachel used to do. "Rachel would be so happy," Betty remarked later, as they all shared tea in the library. "Seeing the girls here, safe, learning music again, it's all she ever wanted for them." Martinez made her final notes of the day. "Miss Parker's presence provides a crucial link to the twins' past, offering emotional continuity and positive memories of their mother. Her inclusion in the children's support circle is highly recommended." As the afternoon wore on, Betty shared more stories about Rachel and the twins. She talked about the impromptu recitals in her living room, how Grace would sometimes show up unexpectedly with gifts for her granddaughter, and the Sunday afternoons when Rachel would bring the girls to bake cookies. "Grace never told me much about her time here," Betty said, glancing around the library, "but she always spoke of this mansion with special fondness, like it held precious memories." Michael thought of the documents Chen had uncovered, the photographs of his father with Grace, the secret payments and hidden properties. The more he learned about the past, the more certain he became of a profound connection between the Bennett and Collins families. "Mrs. Parker," he began carefully, "do you know if Grace left any documents, any letter for Rachel?" Betty hesitated, her teacup trembling slightly. "Rachel had a memory box. After the accident, I kept some of her things for the girls mine when they were older." Thompson and Martinez exchanged telling looks. Any document left by Grace or Rachel could be crucial in legally establishing the family connection Michael suspected. At the piano, Emily managed to play the first notes of the lullaby. Sarah clapped enthusiastically, and for a moment, their smiles resembled Rachel's so closely that Betty had to hold back tears. "Are you sure you want to keep digging?" Thompson asked Michael in a low voice. "Some truths can be painful." Michael watched the twins, now entirely at ease with Betty, sharing stories and memories of their mother. "I need to know," he said. "For them, so I can protect them completely." Betty tucked her photographs back into her bag, except for one she handed to Michael, Grace and Rachel, in Betty's garden, both smiling for the camera, their green eyes shining in the sunlight. "Rachel always said there was a guardian angel watching over them," Betty remarked softly. "I think now we know who it was." When Betty finally said goodbye, promising to return the next day for more piano lessons, the twins appeared calmer, more connected to their past. Emily and Sarah hugged her for a long time, as if afraid she might vanish too. "I'll bring chocolate cookies," Betty promised, kissing the tops of their heads. "And more stories about your mum." Thompson walked Betty back to her house, asking a few more questions about Rachel and Grace. Martinez finished her report, strongly recommending that Betty be included in the twins' routine. Michael stayed in the mansion, watching the twins practice the notes they had learned on the piano. The old lullaby echoed through the halls, awakening dormant memories of his own childhood. In his office, the phone rang. It was Chen again. "I found Grace's will," he announced, "and there's something you need to see immediately." Michael looked at the portrait of his father on the wall, at the photograph of Grace and Rachel in his hands, and at the twins, still intent on the piano. How many secrets did this mansion still hold? What was the true extent of the Bennett-Collins connection? The snow continued to fall softly outside, covering the city in its white blanket. In the Victorian house, Betty Parker finally slept in peace, knowing her little ones were safe. At the precinct, Thompson reread her notes, connecting dots and forming theories. And in the Bennett mansion, two small girls played an old lullaby, their fingers finding in the piano keys a path back to their roots, to the music that flowed in their veins, a legacy of love passed from Grace to Rachel and now to them. Michael watched the girls for a few more moments before heading upstairs to his office. Grace's will could contain the answers he sought, but it might also change everything. As he picked up the phone to return Chen's call, the lullaby continued to echo through the mansion, like an invisible thread connecting past and present, secrets and truths, losses and new beginnings. On his desk, the photograph of Grace and Rachel smiled at him, the same green eyes now shining on Emily and Sarah's faces. Whatever the will revealed, one thing was certain. The twins had finally found their way home. It was 3 a.m. when Michael discovered the irregularity in the paneling behind the bookcase. He was putting back some books he had consulted when he noticed a nearly imperceptible misalignment in the dark oak boards lining the wall. His fingers ran across the polished surface until they found a small protrusion. Heart pounding, he pressed it and heard a soft click. The panel slid open an inch, revealing a hidden safe. "Dad," he muttered, "more secrets." The combination wasn't hard to guess. It was his mother's birth date, something Charles Bennett often used. The safe opened with a metallic groan, revealing neatly stacked documents and a box of photographs. The first image he picked up made his heart stop. It showed his father, very young, maybe in his early 20s, hugging Grace Collins in a garden he didn't recognize. Both smiled in a way Michael had never seen in any other picture of Charles Bennett. Genuine, carefree, full of life. But it was the documents that truly caught his attention. They were drafts of legal paperwork from the early 90s, all unfinished. One in particular made his hands tremble. Paternity acknowledgement I, Charles Edward Bennett, in full possession of my mental faculties, hereby recognize as my legitimate daughter, Rachel Ann Collins. The document was unsigned, a preliminary version never completed. Michael sank into his father's old leather chair, his mind spinning with the implications of this discovery. Upstairs, Emily and Sarah slept peacefully, unaware of the revelations unfolding below. Since Betty Parker had come into their lives, bringing back memories and stories of their mother, the twins seemed more grounded, more at peace. Michael picked up his phone, ignoring the late hour. "Chen, I need you to do something else for me. It's about a DNA test." The next day, Sarah Martinez arrived for her weekly evaluation, finding the twins in the sunroom with Betty. Emily practiced piano while Sarah drew, a scene of domestic life that would have seemed impossible a few weeks earlier. "Their progress is extraordinary," Martinez noted, scribbling in her notes. "Emily is speaking more. Sarah shows less separation anxiety. They're finally developing individual identities without losing their special bond." Betty, supervising Emily's piano practice, smiled proudly. Rachel would be so happy. The girls are becoming who they were before the accident. It was then that something unexpected happened. Emily stopped playing abruptly, turning to Michael, who had just entered the room. "Uncle Mike," she called out naturally, as if she had always called him that. "Come listen to the new song." Time seemed to freeze in the room. Sarah Martinez glanced up from her clipboard. Betty held her breath, and Michael felt his heart leap. Sarah, who had been focused on her drawing, also turned. "Yeah, Uncle Mike. Emily learned the whole song Mummy used to play." Martinez watched the scene carefully, noting how the term uncle had emerged spontaneously, without prompting. In her notes, she wrote, "Significant development. The twins appear to be intuitively recognizing deeper family ties." Later that day, Michael received a discreet envelope from the lab, locked in his office. His hands trembled as he read the DNA results comparing samples from him and the twins. The scientific terms and numbers blurred before his eyes, but one line stood out in stark clarity. Probability of avuncular relationship, uncle-nieces, 99.9%. Rachel really was his sister, his half-sister. The weight of that confirmation hit him like a wave. Memories began snapping into place. The secret payments, the hidden properties, the way his father occasionally asked about that young music teacher, with an interest that now made painful sense. "Mr. Bennett," Betty knocked softly on the door. "The girls are asking if you want to join us for lunch." "Betty," he called, his voice hoarse. "Please come in. We need to talk." The elderly woman entered. Immediately noticing Michael's pallor and the papers strewn across his desk, her keen eyes took in the old photographs, the legal documents, the lab envelope. "You found out, didn't you?" she asked softly. Michael looked up, surprised. "You knew?" "Not for sure," Betty said, taking a seat. "But Rachel, she had so many Bennett traits. The same reserved smile, the same poised posture. And her eyes, yes, they were Grace's, but there was something else about them." "Why did my father never—" Michael began, his voice trailing off. "Times were different," Betty sighed. "Grace understood that. She loved her daughter too much to expose her to scandal. And your father, well, he did what he could as in the only way he knew how." Michael ran his hands over his face, trying to organize his thoughts. "I need to tell Sarah Martinez. The legal implications for custody." "They're your nieces," Betty finished gently. "They always have been." Downstairs, the piano echoed again, Emily practicing the lullaby Rachel used to play. Sarah sang softly along, her childish voice blending with the melody. "How do I tell them?" Michael asked, more to himself than to Betty. "They already know, in some way." Betty smiled. "Didn't you hear what they called you today? Children have a wisdom we adults often don't grasp." Martinez received the news at her office the next morning. Michael brought all the documents, the DNA test, the papers from the safe, the old photographs. "This changes the legal landscape significantly," she said, examining them. "A direct family bond, plus all this evidence of your father's intention to acknowledge Rachel. I want to pursue permanent custody," Michael declared. "Not just as a legal guardian, but as their uncle." Martinez made more notes. "I'll rewrite all the reports in light of these new findings. The emotional stability the girls are showing, along with a proven family connection." "There's one more thing," Michael interrupted, pulling another document from his folder. "I want to officially register Emily and Sarah as Bennetts. My father intended to do it for Rachel. The least I can do now is finish what he started." The news spread quickly among the small circle involved in the case. Thompson received the documents at her desk in the precinct, a satisfied smile crossing her face as the pieces finally fell into place. Betty cried when Michael showed her the DNA results, not in surprise but in relief. "Rachel always felt there was something special about her origins," she said, "but the most important thing to her was protecting the girls, giving them a normal life." The twins themselves seemed to accept the news with a child's peculiar wisdom. When Michael finally sat down with them to explain, in simple age-appropriate terms, about their relationship, Emily only smiled. "We already knew you were family," Sarah stated with childlike simplicity, "just like Aunt Betty." "But how did you know?" Michael asked, genuinely curious. Emily, still playing with the piano keys, answered without looking up. "Because sometimes you have sad eyes like Mommy did." That observation hit Michael deeply. How many times must Rachel have looked in the mirror, seeing features she didn't fully understand, bearing questions she never dared ask? The legal process moved surprisingly fast, bolstered by Martinez's positive reports and the substantial documentary evidence. The judge handling the case was especially interested in the family's story after examining the old photos and the documents found in the safe. "It's as though Charles Bennett was preparing the groundwork," the judge remarked during a preliminary hearing. "All these documents, though never finalized, clearly show intent to acknowledge." Michael wrestled with his own demons as the process advanced. Late at night, after the girls had fallen asleep, he would spend hours in his father's office, rereading old letters, examining photographs, trying to understand the choices Charles Bennett had made. "He loved Grace," Betty told him one evening, finding him lost in thought. "And he loved Rachel too, in his own way. Sometimes love has to hide to protect the ones we cherish." Weeks turned into months. The Bennett mansion gained new life through the twins' laughter, Betty's piano lessons, and the regular visits from Thompson and Martinez, who were now more like friends than supervisors. Emily and Sarah blossomed visibly. The trauma of losing Rachel was still there, of course, but now it coexisted with happy new memories in the making, a family strengthening, roots growing deeper. "They're as much Bennetts as they are Collins," Michael commented one afternoon, watching the twins play in the garden. Maybe that's why they adapted so naturally here. Blood recognizes blood. Martinez, conducting her final official evaluation, smiled. It's not just blood, Michael. It's love. The same love Grace had for Rachel, Rachel had for her daughters, and you now have for your nieces. On the day permanent custody was officially granted, the Bennett mansion hosted a small celebration. Betty baked her famous chocolate cookies, Thompson brought balloons, and Martinez arrived with a cake decorated with musical notes. In a quiet moment during the party, Michael found one particular old photograph of Grace and his father. They were both young, smiling in a distant garden where it all began. Next to it was a recent image of the twins in the same spot, free of secrets and sadness. "We did it, Dad," he murmured to the photo. "We finally did the right thing." "Uncle Mike," Emily's voice called from the music room. "Come see, Sarah learned a new song." Michael smiled, putting the photo away. The past had its secrets and sorrows, but the present was brimming with possibilities. Emily and Sarah weren't just his nieces by blood, they were his nieces by choice, by love, by fate. As he walked toward the music room, where Sarah proudly tapped out a new melody on the piano and Emily cheered her on, Michael felt a peace he hadn't known since finding the twins in that snowy night. The Bennett mansion, which for so long held secrets and shadows, now echoed with music and laughter. Grace and Rachel, wherever they were, surely smiled. And Charles Bennett. Perhaps he finally found rest, knowing his son had finished what he couldn't do in life. Betty watched it all with wise, tired eyes, her heart at peace for keeping her promise to Rachel. The girls were safe, loved, and most importantly, home, exactly where they were always meant to be. Snow began to fall outside, just like on that first night when Michael found the twins. But now, instead of fear and uncertainty, there was only the calm certainty that some stories, no matter how long they take, eventually find their way to a happy ending. Emily finished her music with a dramatic flourish, making everyone laugh. Sarah ran to hug her sister, and Michael felt tears prick his eyes, tears of joy, responsibility, and love. "Come here," he said, opening his arms. The twins ran into his embrace, and for a moment, everything was perfectly right with the world. They were Bennetts, they were Collins. They were simply and completely family. And as the snow continued falling outside, enveloping the city in a white blanket, the Bennett mansion housed not only a reunited family, but also living proof that some secrets, when finally revealed, can heal old wounds and create new beginnings. Michael knew there was still much to discover, much to understand about the past. But now, with Emily and Sarah safe in his arms, with Betty smiling at the piano, and Thompson and Martinez quietly celebrating in the background, he realized some truths are simple. Family is family, love is love, and sometimes fate has a surprising way of righting old wrongs. Sarah Martinez adjusted her glasses as she finished her final report on the Bennett-Collins case. Her hands hovered over the keyboard for a moment as she chose her final words. After a year of intensive observation and regular follow-ups, there is no doubt that granting permanent custody to Mr. Michael Bennett was not only appropriate, but providential. Emily and Sarah Bennett Collins exhibit exceptional development in all aspects, emotional, social, and academic. The family bond established, strengthened by the discovery of their true relationship, has created an environment of growth and healing that surpasses all professional expectations. She paused, a soft smile on her lips as she recalled the transformation she had witnessed over the past year. She continued typing. The Bennett mansion, once a symbol of family secrets and suppressed pain, has become a true home where the legacy of Rachel Collins and Grace Collins is honored and celebrated daily. The constant presence of Ms. Betty Parker as a grandmother figure and vital link to the girls' past has been instrumental in their healing and adjustment. The sound of childish laughter drifted through her open window. The twins were arriving for the celebration of their 6th birthday, which coincided with the official finalization of the adoption process. The Bennett mansion was unrecognizable. Colorful balloons danced in the summer breeze, ribbons spiraled around the columns at the entrance, and a huge banner declared, "Happy birthday, Emily and Sarah, Welcome officially to the Bennett family. Betty had arrived early, overseeing the last details of the decoration, with the same dedication she gave to everything involving the twins. Her wrinkled hands carefully arranged photographs in the new memory room, a special space Michael had created to preserve the history of both the Collins and Bennett families. "Perfect," she murmured, adjusting a photo of Rachel at the piano, with Grace at her side. Next to it was a recent picture of Emily in the same position, Sarah beside her, their smiles identical to their mother's. Michael watched the preparations from his office, where he was finalizing the last documents for the Rachel and Grace Bennett Collins Foundation. The organization, established with part of his personal inheritance, aimed to help families in similar situations, orphans with unknown relatives, families split by circumstances beyond their control. "Uncle Mike," Emily's voice called from the yard. "Come see what we found." He smiled, putting the papers away. It still amazed him how natural the title Uncle felt now, as if it had always been his destiny to fill that role in the girls' lives. In the garden, Emily and Sarah had discovered an old swing set hidden among the century-old trees. Michael recognized it immediately. It was the same swing set from some of the old photos, where a young Grace pushed a small Rachel. "Can we fix it?" Sarah asked, her green eyes, the eyes of the Collins, the eyes of the Bennetts, shining with anticipation. "Of course," he answered, examining the worn ropes. "We'll make it a family project." Every time he said family, his heart filled to the brim. In the span of a year, the mansion had gone from a formal, rather cold place to a genuine home. The once silent corridors now rang with music and laughter. The sunroom had become a music room, where Betty supervised daily piano practice. The memory room was especially significant. Michael had personally overseen its layout, creating a visual timeline that began with the earliest photos of Grace at the mansion, moved through Rachel's life, and culminated in the present with the twins. It was a living testament to how love, even forced into the shadows by the norms of its time, found ways to survive and bloom across generations. "The guests of honor are here," Thompson's voice announced from the garden's entrance. The detective, now a close family friend, carried a huge gift box. Emily and Sarah ran to hug her, their matching dresses fluttering in the breeze. A year ago, they could barely make eye contact with strangers. Now their unique personalities sparkled. Emily, the born musician, always ready to perform. Sarah, the keen observer, capturing the world in her ever more elaborate drawings. Martinez arrived soon after, carrying her final report in an elegant folder. "Where's the man of the hour?" she asked, scanning for Michael. "Here," he replied, emerging from the garden with leaves in his hair, a side effect of checking out the old swing. The adoption ceremony would be simple, just a legal formality to confirm what everyone already knew in their hearts. But Michael had insisted on celebrating properly, making it a memorable birthday party for the twins. Betty led everyone to the memory room before the official festivities began. It was a tradition she had established, some quiet moments of reflection and gratitude before every family celebration. "Rachel would be so proud," she said, her voice quivering with emotion. "And Grace, well, Grace always knew this day would come, somehow." The walls of the room told the story silently. Photographs, letters, newspaper clippings, all carefully preserved and displayed. In a special corner rested the old, unfinished DNA test from Charles Bennett, side by side with the new one that finally confirmed what he never could. "This is only the beginning," Michael murmured, watching the twins explore the memories with a sense of familial reverence. "The Rachel and Grace Foundation starts operations next month. We'll help other families reconnect, heal old wounds." Martinez smiled, recalling her initial caution about the case. "You know, in all my years of social work, I've never seen a story like this. It's as if every puzzle piece was waiting for the right moment to click into place." The subsequent party was a celebration of life, love, and family in the truest sense. Emily and Sarah blew out their birthday candles, decorated with musical notes and paintbrushes, representing their individual passions. Betty served her now essential chocolate cookies. While the guests were celebrating, Michael found himself drifting back to the memory room. His eyes fell on a particular photo, Grace and Charles, young and smiling in that distant garden. Next to it was a recent shot of the twins in the same spot, their smiles free of secrets or sadness. "We did it, Dad," he murmured to the photograph. "We finally made it right." Betty found him there, her wise eyes understanding the moment without words. "You know," she said softly, "Rachel used to say there were angels watching over her girls. I think she was right. She just didn't know the angels were their own family, waiting to be revealed." From the garden, Emily's voice called out, "Uncle Mike! Aunt Betty, come on!" Sarah wants to show everyone her new drawings. The afternoon passed in a peaceful celebration of family and friendship. Thompson shared stories from her years as a detective, continually returning to how this case had touched her heart in a unique way. Martinez, relaxed and smiling, felt far removed from the formal social worker who first stepped through the mansion's doors. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in pink and gold, the twins asked to play something on the piano. It was the old lullaby again, the one Rachel had taught them, that Grace had passed down, and that now lived on in another generation. Michael watched his nieces at the piano, their little fingers dancing over the keys with growing confidence. Betty discreetly wiped away a tear, and even Thompson and Martinez seemed moved by the performance. The music resonated through the Bennett mansion, no longer a lament for the past, but a celebration of the present and a promise for the future. The walls that once held so many secrets now embraced a healed, united family. "To Rachel and Grace," Michael silently toasted with his glass when the music ended. "To family," Betty added softly. Emily and Sarah ran to hug their uncle, their laughter mingling with the piano's last echoing note. And in that moment, in the Bennett Collins mansion, there were no more secrets, no more pain, only love, only family, only the sweet dawn of a new chapter in their lives. Martinez wrapped up her final report with one last note. The Bennett Collins case reminds us that family isn't just about blood or legal papers. It's about love, acceptance, and the courage to confront the past to build a better future. Emily and Sarah have found not just a home, but their true place in the world, exactly where they were always meant to be. And so, as night gently fell over the mansion, a family celebrated not just a birthday or an official adoption, but the triumph of love over the shadows of the past, the victory of truth over secrets, and the miraculous way in which hearts, even separated by circumstances and time, can finally find their way home.